Welcome to the Legacy Radio Network. This is the Everything Financial Radio Show, and I'm your host, Dennis Tubbergen. If you're just joining us for the very first time, we are here every week at this time, and we're glad you're with us. We have a terrific show lined up for you today. We have Mr. Ian Gordon of the Long Wave Group as a special guest. We'll chat with Mr. Gordon about his most recent newsletter in which he predicted that we would see banking failures moving ahead, as well as changes in some of the world currencies. We're going to have what I think you'll believe to be a fascinating conversation with Mr. Gordon. He will be joining us momentarily. Also, this past week, a member of the European Parliament came out and publicly stated that a really dramatic banking collapse was possible. And one of the founders of the euro this past week came out and said it's unlikely the euro can survive in its current form. Deflation in China. Deflation in China. The Chinese economy has hit a hard landing, it appears. We've been talking about that possibility for the last year. New property starts in China down 27%. We'll talk about what that might mean. And we're going to give you an update on Greece and give you some proof that massive debt levels are deflationary. We'll talk about all these news stories, and we'll talk about how they might affect you and your money. And I'd like to make you an offer if you've not already taken advantage of it. It's been a very popular offer. We've had lots of folks call and request the 2012 guide, Surviving a Market Crash. We'll be glad to get you your complimentary copy. All you need to do is visit our website at investingapproach.com. That is investingapproach.com. Just enter your name and address. Let us know where to mail the 2012 guide, and we'll be glad to send it to you. We've extended the offer here for another week due to overwhelming response. Also, this past week, we had a couple of very well-attended discovery groups. If you'd like more information on upcoming discovery groups, you can go visit personallegacyseminars.com and get more information about the topics we cover and where we're going to be and when. That's personallegacyseminars.com. Also, a quick reminder before we bring on Mr. Ian Gordon, if you would like to go back and listen to any past interviews with Peter Schiff or Jim Rogers or Professor Lawrence Kotlikoff or any of the other folks that we've had on the show, you can do so at everythingfinancialradio.com. We have all the shows and interviews archived there. Just click on the appropriate show archive link, and all the past shows will pop up, and you can listen to them at your convenience. I'm very pleased to have back with me on the Everything Financial Radio Show here on the Legacy Radio Network, Mr. Ian Gordon of the Long Wave Group. Ian, I very much appreciate you being back on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I always enjoy being on the show.
Ian, I was reading your July 24th newsletter, and I might add I read it with great interest. And in it, you wrote that in simple terms today, we are facing a crisis that is far, far worse than in 2008. Before it ends, it's possible we'll see the entire Western financial system collapse and a new system put into place. You add that the current economic and financial system is thoroughly dishonest. It's based upon paper or fiat money, and paper money is debt money. It is overwhelming debt that is now threatening to engulf us. Now, in this, you address the point or make the points that many major banks may disappear, and you state that to all intents and purposes, a majority of European banks are already on life support. Can you comment on the worldwide banking system and some potential outcomes that you might envision from this point on?
Well, I think, again, the issue is the debt issue, and who are the major creditors? They're the banks, and right now, particularly in Europe, the European banks' principal assets are the sovereign debt and generally of the nation in which those banks reside. So those assets, in many cases, being downsized or simply because the country's debt is basically coming under attack. So, I mean, Greece can never effectively repay the debt that she's been bailed out twice. They're probably going to have to bail her out again if they want to bail her out again. And so the Greek banks, the Greek debt on their books, those assets are going to be in dire straits. And as are, the debts that the banks have taken on, particularly let's go to Spain and look at the huge debts that the Spanish banks have taken on in Spanish real estate, and the Cajas, the Spanish banks there, essentially they're already effectively bankrupt, and they're looking for a bailout of I think there's $100 billion equivalent of dollars to try and hold these banks from going down. And now I just read this morning that these banks are also that they issue preferred shares to mainly to Spanish investors, and now those investors are basically going to have to take a major haircut on those investments, and that's sort of being put in place by the dictates of the European powers.
So, Ian, do you envision that we will see bank holidays? And when I speak at my discovery groups, we talk about the bank holiday that Franklin Roosevelt called, if you will, back in 1932. Are we going to see history repeat itself?
Well, I'm pretty sure we are. I mean, we're getting runs on banks in Europe already, and eventually, much as Roosevelt did. By the way, it was in 1933 because that's when he became the president. But what he did was he closed all the banks for 6 days and sent in examiners, so that and those examiners went in and sort of quickly declared several banks insolvent, and they were closed down, and other banks were sort of allowed to sort of go on life support, and then other banks are considered to be truly in good shape. So, I think we're going to have to, that we're going to see that again once the whole situation really starts to blow up. And I think too that we have a major issue with Western banks, particularly U.S. banks and British banks, in as much as those banks have gone back to being not only being banks taking in the savings of people and lending out money to people, but they've become huge investment banks as well. Now, following the 29 crash, there was a separation, between the street banks and the investment banks, and when Clinton became president, he allowed banks to go back into the investment world. Well, that's a very dangerous world to be in. I mean, investments, particularly stock markets, don't continue to go up forever, so that puts added pressure on the U.S. and British banks, is because they become major investment banks as well as major banks. So I think this is going to be a huge problem, and much of these banks, these British and American banks, that they have huge derivatives on their books as well that could be a major detriment to the system. I mean, we've already seen American banks fail, Lehman Brothers and so on. So that I think we're in a very precarious position at this point in time.
Ian, we're coming up on a break, but before we go to break, a couple things I'd like to do. I'm going to let everybody know how to get more information about your newsletter momentarily. And there's an old saying before I ask the question that you can predict events or you can predict timing. If you try to predict both, you're likely going to be wrong. I'm going to ask you to go against that and let me know what you think about as far as timing. When are we going to start seeing these bank failures in your view?
Well, I think the real issue, the initial failures will occur in Europe, and that's because the European sovereign debt crisis will basically, the Germany and the major countries won't be able to hold it back. And Germany ultimately is going to find that it's too great a cost to Germany to try and keep the system afloat. And when the system starts to collapse, the banking system will also start to collapse. So we'll start to see, I think, the banking failures occurring in Europe as sovereign nations start to fail.
Ian, we're coming up on a break, but quickly let's the listeners know where they can get more information about your work and your newsletter.
Well, we have a site, it's Longwave Group. It is a subscriber site, but there's a lot of information on the site that's available to non-subscribers, and I think they might find it helpful. And you just go on the site, there are lots of great charts and stuff on that chart that show that, we've been able to forecast with a high degree of accuracy this unfolding debt crisis.
We are chatting with Mr. Ian Gordon of the Longwave Group. We will return and chat more with Mr. Gordon when Everything Financial Radio returns. Stay with us.